Thank you for watching Mature Living. I'm Mary Yanez, Director of the Senior Adult Program at the El Paso Community College. And we want to talk about 3 different topics today, which are very important for this community. And we've invited Gabriella Reed, who is the Area Division Chief for the County Attorney's Office, and she's here to talk to us about some important things that this community needs to know. And one of them is the services that the County Attorney's Office offers. And so thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Mary.
Gabriella, I haven't seen you for a while since you've been back, but
Yes.
but I know you have addressed our students in one of our classes, and it was so interesting that we thought the rest of the community needed to know. Tell me about the County Attorney's Office and the different types of services you offer.
Sure. The County Attorney's Office we service the county at large. And so we're unique in that we have both civil and criminal jurisdiction. I think most people in the public are familiar more with our civil work that we do. For example, we represent the elected officials. So we represent the judges, we represent the sheriff's office, the commissioners if they have an issue. Most of the time, the representation is done in-house. If there's something unique or a big type of lawsuit or something like that, sometimes it'll get referred out. Sometimes the Texas government code determines when they can have their own outside counsel to represent them. But for the most part, the county attorney's office does the representation for all the department heads of the county of El Paso.
When we're speaking about the county, how far does it extend the area?
You know, El Paso County is really large. We are pretty much from Cañotillo all the way out to Fabens. Okay. So that's a very large area.
Yes.
And so if you're in the county of El Paso, then the county attorney's office has jurisdiction. We, with our annex offices, have various locations to try to address the issue of El Paso County being so large. So, for example, we recently, within the past 2 years, opened up our office, and actually it's within the past 3 years, our office out in Vinton.
Okay.
So right off of the Westway exit in Vinton, Texas, we have an office out there.
Great.
It's an annex, and there's other county offices out there as well. And then, you know how El Paso's grown so far east now.
Yes.
So we have an annex office in Socorro, which is off of Socorro Road. And so, you know, that's where we get Horizon and Fabens and Socorro services. And then we also have an annex office in the Northeast, right across from Cohen Stadium. And then, of course, we have our downtown office, which right now is a little difficult to reach because of all the construction.
Yes.
So we encourage people to know about those annex offices if they don't, because it's a lot easier to park and get to for services.
It's wonderful. So anyone that has a legal question can go to any of the offices, and they will sit with them and just interview them.
Sure. So the general public, of course, you know, wants to know whether or not we can represent them. The majority of the time we can't. There are specialized areas of the law where we do, in essence, direct representation, but for the most part we don't. However, if any member of the public has a question, a legal question, our office is a good place to start, our annex offices, because one, we have an attorney, I'm the attorney out there, and we can visit with you and try to figure out what exactly is your legal problem, and then we can direct you in the right way. So we can tell you, oh, okay, sounds like a family law issue. It sounds like you need a family law lawyer to give you legal advice. Here's a referral for the family law bar. Here are some phone numbers that you want to call, and here's the type of specialty lawyer that you need. So we're good at being able to kind of visit with individuals, sort out what their issue is, determine is there anything our office can do. 9 times out of 10 there may not be, but we know, okay, you don't need a family lawyer, you need a probate lawyer, or you need, you know, a civil lawyer who can help you navigate this business issue.
And
so
there's also the legal aid.
Absolutely. There's legal aid, and we do lots of referrals to legal aid. Of course, you know, they are underfunded and basically have lots of business for the very limited amount of space that they have to take cases. So we try to troubleshoot and let you know what kind of private lawyer you might need, because legal aid, unfortunately, is not able to handle everything.
What kind of cases or I guess situations that you can take care of?
So the county attorney's office has very different services. So for example, what the general public would generally utilize this for are mental health. For example, if you had a family member who suffered from a mental illness and they were off of their meds and they were presenting with being a danger to themselves or being a danger to others, and you really thought, wow, this person needs to be evaluated, but you call the police and for whatever reason they're not able to assist you, you can come to our office and fill out what's called an emergency detention. And basically that's an application to get your loved one to a facility to be evaluated to determine if they need inpatient services.
Because sometimes they're not criminals, but they're acting like they're, you know, an unusual way or aggressive, and all they need is some medical attention as opposed to being arrested and ending up in the
right. So if the public comes and fills out that application, we do a screening, we determine danger to self or others, and then refer it up to the court. That service is free of charge.
Yes. What kinds of reports are we lagging behind that we need people to know to keep our city safe and keep it as the safest city in the nation?
Sure. Well, and that really touches on the other areas that we do direct kind of public service. That would be protective orders, elder abuse, and DTPA.
Yes.
So DTPA is deceptive trade business practices.
Okay.
And so for protective orders, you know, we strongly encourage everyone to come to our office if they believe they're a victim of domestic violence or family abuse.
Does it matter citizenship?
It does not matter. Our office will serve you whether or not you are here legally or not here legally. You know, there has been, obviously, with the political climate in the nation right now and some recent events that occurred in our courthouse, I think that there may be some fear out there, and we want to encourage individuals to not have that fear to come to the county attorney's office and seek services.
Yes.
You know, whenever we sit down with someone who's undocumented and determine there is a case and that it can go forward, of course we're going to counsel of what potential outcomes could be.
Yes.
But in that same conversation, we're trying to identify, are there things that the undocumented person would qualify for, where we can refer them for services, for example, U visas, which are specific visas that you qualify for based on if you're a victim of a crime. And so while we're not immigration attorneys, we are able to kind of give that umbrella identification and say, okay, we know you're not documented. We know that there might be some issues down the way. Here are some steps and here are some resources to see if we can get them in place to give that victim the most confidence and protection so that they feel safe and good about going to court and seeking services.
Yes. And so we don't want criminals to get away with crimes.
Absolutely.
Because they'll continue.
Right. And so that's why we encourage to continue calling the police if you're a victim of abuse. Also with elderly, I know we have a lot of elderly in our area who are not necessarily documented as well. But if they're victims of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, we still need those calls to go into adult protective services, to still go to the police, because there's going to be no relief if we don't call and report.
Yes.
And then additionally, we're kind of giving the criminals or the wrongdoers a free pass because they're going to try to intimidate you based on that status of not being here legally.
And that will not affect the protection that they need. So what number can we give so that people can begin to call and ask questions? And
sure.
I know I don't get to all the questions that I think you probably even have in mind to answer. But we're going to continue our conversation in a minute, but what number can you?
You know, if the general public has any legal questions that they just want to kind of talk to a lawyer and see if they can get referred out, that number is 915-858-2239. And of course, if there's any reports of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of our elderly or disabled, that number is 1-800-252-5400. And then, of course, if you're seeking services for the El Paso County Attorney's Office for like a protective order,
yes.
You need to do an emergency detention, or you have an issue with a deceptive trade practice business, the same number I gave earlier, the 858-2239 is a good number to call.
Great. we're going to be back with more conversations with Gabriella Reed, who is an attorney with the County Attorney's Office, and she's a division chief, so she has a lot of good information to share, and we'll be right back. We want to continue our conversation, and we have here Gabriella Reed, who is a division chief with the County Attorney's Office. And so we want to continue our conversation with a different topic. Let's see if we can talk about living wills. So important for seniors, for family members. Living wills are, and she's going to explain everything about it. I know I did mine.
Yeah, well, that's good.
So let's talk about living wills. How do we begin the conversation?
Well, you know, it's good to start the conversation with end-of-life planning, right?
Yes.
All of us know one thing for certain, and that's that we're not going to be here forever.
Taxes and
right.
dying.
So while it's not a pleasant topic to talk about, you know, leaving this earth, I think it's a really necessary topic for families to have.
Yes.
And the best time to have it is when there's no crisis.
Yeah.
The best time to have it is, you know, when nobody needs one.
There's no crisis, there's no stress.
Exactly. And so that's when we like to talk about what the difference is between a will and a living will.
Okay.
So a will in general, most people think of when I die, I need a will. So that's like your property, where your house is going to go, your stuff. A living will is basically more towards health care. So it talks about what you want and what you desire in treatment. So for example, if you're suffering from a long-term illness, for example, cancer, you might want to make sure you've done a living will because you want to be clear about what it is your wishes are. And that's why we encourage people to do living wills. What you can do in a living will is basically identify, hey, I want to be hooked up to a machine and all the experimental medicine. I want you to go as far as you can go. Or you might be the opposite and say, you know what, I don't ever want to be hooked up to a machine. And, you know, I don't want to live with a tube, a feeding tube, or I don't want to have to go through dialysis every single day. And so it's a good way to let your family know what your desires are for treatment.
And your desires have to be respected and honored. And do you need to sign a living will and keep it accessible?
Absolutely. So,
in the home.
So living wills, the forms, it's pretty much a statutory form. So it's free. You can find it online, but more importantly, the county attorney's office has them available for free. And we do living wills clinics for free as well. So we can sit down and counsel with someone, or we can have a big event like at a church or a group meeting where we explain all the provisions of it, help you fill it out, and then have witnesses to that will. It does need to be witnessed. It does need to be kept in a safe place. It doesn't need to be registered downtown, but you need a trusted family member or friend to have a copy of it. So if something happens to you and you're in the emergency room, they're going to say, wait a minute, she has this living will, here's this document.
Yes.
So you want to make sure you keep it safe and you tell people you trust about it.
Because once life support is put into effect, then it's hard to take it off.
You know, it depends on what the situation is. And doctors are always going to want to know, is there a living will? Okay. Is there a do not resuscitate? You know, who's capable of making medical decisions for an individual who's no longer able to communicate or speak for themselves? Yes. And so a living will sort of touches on all of those topics.
Great. What about guardianship? Tell me a little bit about that topic.
So guardianship is a little bit different. It's basically when you identify who you want to take care of you in the event that you are no longer able to take care of yourself. And that is a very serious legal proceeding. Yes. Because you are basically, a court is declaring that you need a guardian, and it is declaring that you no longer are capable of making decisions for yourself in regard to your self as well as in regard to your estate, so your money. So it's a very serious matter, and it gives that person who becomes the guardian over you a lot of power. So we always recommend that you do a designation of guardian in advance. Again, you fill out the statutory form that says, I want Mary Yanez to be my guardian. And you can say who you don't want to be your guardian in that same document. Wow. And while it can still be challenged, it carries a lot of weight in court, presuming that you've executed that document when you were of sound mind and you were well.
Yeah, and when you choose a guardian, you need someone that you trust, that can handle your affairs honestly, and will respect your wishes.
Absolutely, because if someone is appointed guardian, they ultimately may determine where you live. They may determine
Your care,
who your caregivers are, how much money and where your money is spent. So it's a real serious
bills.
Decision. Absolutely.
Yeah, handle financial, your assets as
Right.
well. Huh?
And they have a fiduciary duty to
Okay.
you and to the court, you know, to uphold your wishes and do everything legally.
And there's a lot of ill will, I guess you could say sometimes. And so we need to protect ourselves, and we need to think very thoroughly about guardianships and those kinds of things. Anything else that you want to mention in this part of the show? I'd like to, just give you the opportunity. I don't ask all the right questions sometimes.
Well, I just think that when you're thinking about end-of-life planning, it's real important to talk to an expert. You can always call the county attorney's office for some basic questions. The majority of the time, we're going to refer you out to a probate attorney. We have a wonderful probate bar here in El Paso, and we can give you their phone number. We're not able to refer specific attorneys, but we can give you the number for the probate bar. And there's lots of things to talk about at end of life other than guardianship and living wills. If you have a really small estate and you don't own a lot of property, then maybe a transfer of deed upon death is more appropriate than a living will.
Okay.
If all you have is a vehicle, then maybe the vehicle transfer upon death is also more appropriate. So it's really important to sit down with an expert in the field to kind of converse and discuss what needs are, what your desires are, where you want to leave a legacy. If you want to start a foundation scholarship or something to that effect.
Maybe you love pets.
Or do you even need one?
Yes.
I mean, is it even worth the expense of getting one? Of course, the lawyer in me says you always need one. But, I mean, there are realistically some times where if there are no heirs and there's nobody to fight, then maybe you don't.
Yes.
And so only an expert in the field would be able to really get with you and tell you about that.
In this part of the show, I'd like to give that phone number again for the county attorney's office.
So the county attorney's office number is 915-858-2239.
Great. And we want to come back with Gabriella for more conversation and talk about elder abuse, a really important aspect of community, and how we need to report. Thank you for staying with us. We're here with Gabriella Reed, who is the division chief with the county attorney's office, and she handles a really important aspect of this community and of our seniors. Protecting our seniors as we protect children, the most vulnerable. And because there's some legal things that you need to know about elder abuse. And so she's here to talk to us about it. Thank you, Gabriella, for staying with us. And
Thank
and
you,
so
Mary.
For being here on Mature Living.
Well, thank you.
Elder abuse is so important because our seniors are the most vulnerable, and we need to make sure that we're protecting that population.
Absolutely. So the county attorney's office, our role, we thought it was so important that we created an elder protection unit.
Yes.
And we've had this unit now for several years, and we continue to do outreach and community education in partnership with our clients, Adult Protective Services, and telling people about what elder abuse is.
Yes.
And my role today, hopefully, is to give people some knowledge about what their legal options are for instances of elder abuse. And when I speak of the elderly, I also do include the disabled, because this particular statute applies to the elderly as well as the disabled. Mm-hmm. And so we want to talk about, obviously reporting is our number one thing that we want to stress to people. It's just like with child abuse. It's a little more difficult, I think, with the elderly because you tend to have, families tend to close when you have an issue with an elderly, the immediate family, and so the extended family doesn't always know what's going on, but we really encourage that the extended family kind of stick your nose in that business and know what's going on and make that report if you feel like something's wrong. Lots of times we have that feeling of, oh, you know, well, it's a family thing and, you know, they're handling it the best they can. Well, if the best they can is not really what you think is good, then report it, because
you suspect something
absolutely
weird here. Yeah.
Because a lot of times people don't necessarily intend to neglect an elderly person, but the plan they have in place is not sufficient for the needs of that elderly person.
And sometimes it's the elder themselves that wants to protect a son or daughter or grandchild that is just taking him to the bank every time that Social Security check comes in, and then they don't have enough money for the end of the month because, you know, something happens there.
Absolutely. And you know, the biggest, while it's abuse, neglect, and exploitation, family members tend to be the #1 perpetrators, and it usually tends to be neglect and exploitation. Oh. And the reason for that is because here in El Paso, we tend to take care of our own family. And so you have maybe the grandson, that's mijo, that's taking care of grandma, but their level of care is not up to the level of care the individual needs. And then of course, grandma's not going to report that mijo's taking money, and you know, grandma doesn't have enough to eat at the end of the month because mijo took the money.
Yeah.
So we want to be real careful and absolutely report even a suspicion. You can do the reports anonymously. You can leave your name if you want to. There's no repercussions for making a report if it comes out that it's not a substantiated report or a validated report. It's not like the state is going to come back and punish you saying, oh, you made a false report. Now, if there's a pattern of abusing reporting, absolutely. But if it's 1 or 2 times over a period of months, even if they don't validate or substantiate your suspicions, there's not going to be any punishment to you for reporting.
And also persons that are disabled suffer in the same way sometimes.
Absolutely, because if you think about it, someone who's disabled usually has to be dependent on someone else. And so whenever you're in those positions of having to trust others is where sometimes things can go wrong.
Yes.
And we just want to make sure that the public's aware. You can always call the county attorney's office. You know, we have enjoyed a very good relationship with the community, and that people will call us and say, hey, this is what's going on with my mom or my uncle or my aunt. What do you think?
Or an acquaintance.
Absolutely. A neighbor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You got to keep our eyes and ears open.
Absolutely.
Take care of those elderly neighbors.
Right. And you know, we have summer coming up, and it's already hot, and it's not even summer yet. So,
yes.
You know, you want to watch out for differences, patterns. If your neighbor's always out at 6 in the morning watering and they're suddenly not out at 6 in the morning watering, you should be thinking, wow, I wonder what happened, yes. And knocking on that door to make sure that they're okay, to do a welfare check. You know, if things are not okay, that's when our office gets really intimately involved.
Yes.
Through our clients,
like
Adult
the way you say it.
Right.
Intimately involved.
Right. Our clients, Adult Protective Services, will refer a case to us, and then we'll do an evaluation legally to determine what options are there. You know, everybody kind of says, oh, don't call APS, I want to stay in my home. You know, one of the options is taking the elderly or disabled out of the home. But that's not an option. That's not the first option. That's not the best option. That's only
if they are in danger.
Right. That's usually a last resort. That's kind of, we've explored everything else, and there's really no other choice.
Yes.
Okay. And then when we talk about people's finances as well, Adult Protective Services can refer cases to us for exploitation, and we have some legal tools that we can use to get information to determine, is there really some exploitation going on here?
Yes.
What's happening with those bank accounts or those estates?
If their accounts are dwindling,
Sure.
and here the elder has many years of good life, and,
Right.
and then they don't have anything to live on.
Right. And the other thing of exploitation that lots of people don't think of with elderly is deceptive trade business and acts. And that's basically, you know, that person who knocks on your door and says, hey, I'll fix that wall or I'll cut that tree. And they'll tell you, oh, it's only going to be $400. You pay me $200 now and I'll be back after I go buy the materials, and then they don't come back.
Yes.
You can come to our office and we can see if we can prosecute that for you. Some base information though, anytime you're giving anyone money for a service, see if you can get a contract. You don't need a contract, but even if you just take out a piece of paper and write, Willie Johnson has agreed to cut my tree.
Yes.
I, Gabriella Reed, agreed to you cutting my tree for $200 on this date. And you put the date, you sign it, you have them sign it, and then say, hey, what's your phone number? Write their phone number down. Can I have your address also? If they don't want to give you an address,
Something's wrong.
don't give them any money. Just say, oh, it's all right. You know what? I changed my mind.
Yes, or I'll check with my son, or I'll check with my
Yeah.
husband. Or
Take some precautions.
yes, yes, very good. Again, the phone number is so important because you can't do anything unless people report.
Absolutely.
So the first thing is, even if you're in doubt, it doesn't matter. Report. Let your office, the experts, look into things.
Sure.
And if nothing's wrong, that's perfectly fine. But if they discover abuse, neglect, or exploitation, then you get it. Then you can protect that elder
Sure.
or that person with disability.
Yes.
So can we give your phone number again?
Sure. Let me give the 800 number to report. That's
Yes.
1-800-252-5400. You can report by phone or you can report online. You would just Google Texas Adult Abuse Reporting and it'll pull up the page. And then again, if you have a question and you just kind of want a soundboard, our number at the county attorney's office is 915-858-2239. And again, we do talk to many people in the public to kind of be a soundboard and say, you know what, I really do think you need to report that. And reporting can be done anonymously if you're afraid to leave your name.
Well, you've been watching Mature Living, and we'll see you next time.
Judy Vasquez thinks of herself as a jibarita flourishing in the desert. A poet and retired instructor from UTEP, she teaches creative writing for the senior adult program and will be reading from her recently published first book, And Joyful y Alegre.
Tinsel from my Christmas tree. As I pull tinsel off last year's pine, Chuito claims my tears, singing aguinaldos from mommy's time. Le lo la, le lo la, lo le lo la, le lo la, lo le lo la, le lo lea. Borinquen home, sweet home, ay bendito nena, all beauty and love. Le lo la, le lo la, lo le lo la, le lo la, tinsel in a crisp brown bag.